Trump is drowning. Trump's presidency is drowning. Yesterday, Republicans force a vote to extend Obamacare subsidies against Trump's will. Yesterday, 38% approval in the Marist poll. Monday, his Rob Reiner tweet that appalled even the worst of MAGA. Tuesday, Susie Wiles. Friday, the Epstein Files, proving, no, history doesn't repeat itself, but yes, sometimes it literally rhymes. So much failure, so many L's, so little time to cackle. Sometimes the shit comes down so heavy, as my late friend Bill Hurt said in the movie Body Heat, I feel like I should wear a hat. Only Trump doesn't have a hat. He went to Wag-The-Dog in Venezuela and nobody even noticed. And he screwed that up, too, insisting an American armada had entirely surrounded Venezuela and setting aside that unauthorized act of war. You really want to call it an armada, like the Spanish Armada that crashed and burned instead of taking over England in 1588, and Spain hasn't been a world power since? And did you say your armada had entirely surrounded Venezuela? Does that include the 3,200 miles of the Venezuelan border that is on land? Did you park a battleship on the border with Brazil, Donnie, you flatulent moron? Also, this is about narco-terrorism, whatever the F that is. No, it's really about oil. It's about stuff they stole. It's nuh-uh. For the first but not the last time today, we turn to Susie Wiles for the, well, it's a strange word to use about the Trump administration, but here it is, about the truth. Quoting her, he wants to keep on blowing boats up until Maduro cries uncle, and people way smarter than me on that say he will, unquote. So it's regime change. And of course, there is that other reality that never occurred to Trump as he drowns. Where's your armada now? If he and Rubio and these other political whores can declare that they can take Venezuela's oil, and more importantly, they can try to force regime change in Venezuela, guess what? That means that Venezuela is entitled to try to force regime change in America. Stop, don't, come back. Trump is drowning on dry land. The Marist poll, commissioned for NPR and PBS, 38% approval. 38. He's cracked the bottom 40. His worst number this term, worst overall since 2018. And 38% is better than the interior numbers in this poll. Approval on the economy is 36%. Who do you trust to handle the economy? Republicans, 33%. Democrats, 37%. Economic disapproval of Trump by group. Rural residents, 49 to 43 disapprove. White women who didn't go to college, 48% disapprove to 41. Suburbs, the suburbs. Oi. 60% disapprove on the economy to 33 who approve. And the strength of your opinion about him, of registered voters asked if they approve or disapprove of him, half say they strongly disapprove. Half. And 6 out of 10 of us say the economy isn't working for us. 6 out of 10 of us are pessimistic about the year ahead. He's even lost 5% of Republican approval in just the last month. Trump is drowning. They did not ask about the Trump Memorial Ballroom and ego storage airplane hangar, which he first said would cost only $100 million. Then it was $200, then $250, all of it paid by donors, then $300, then Tuesday night $400 million, and he can't believe he was sued over it. I mean, it's only $400 million. And oh, by the way, it opens in late 2028. And I hope the new president immediately tears it down. Put that on pay-per-view. By the way, Trump says it will have 5-inch thick windows and be totally impenetrable. 5-inch thick and totally impenetrable. Hey, just like Trump. Last indication of Trump drowning. Then we'll figure out why Susie Wiles just ended the prosecutions of Jack Smith and James Comey and Tish James and the others. The last indication of Trump drowning is a sports story. I don't particularly like the former New York radio host Mike Francesa. This goes back to only 1989. I don't respect him, but I do respect his sources. And on his podcast, he told tales of the collapse of the 2025 New York Mets, and he gave insight into what happened to send them plummeting from 5 games up with nearly twice as many wins as losses in the middle of June to 13 games out at the end of the season, and the team's top 2 stars being allowed to walk away via free agency last week, and popular outfielder Brandon Nimmo being traded to Texas for an aging infielder. According to Francesa's guy, Nimmo and star shortstop Francisco Lindor had a problem in the clubhouse. This is explained by Francesa's source, and the source, Francesa pronounces it sauce. The sauce says the problem was that one of them liked Trump and the other didn't like Trump. Brandon Nimmo is from Cheyenne, Wyoming, and Francisco Lindor is from Caguas in Puerto Rico. I wonder if we can figure this mystery out. Trump broke up the Mets. Actually, that might be his only significant accomplishment of his first term. I'd like to congratulate Susie Wiles on single-handedly ending the just-forming prosecution of Jack Smith and the vowed prosecution of Anthony Fauci and the already-moribund prosecutions of James Comey and Letitia James and Adam Schiff and all those cases will be thrown out of court. All of them, because Susie Wiles is on tape saying, quote, "I don't think Trump wakes up thinking about retribution, but when there's an opportunity, he will go for it." And about Comey specifically, quote, "I mean, people could think it does look vindictive. I can't tell you why you shouldn't think that," unquote. Trump's chief of staff, current chief of staff, not ex-chief of staff, not off the record, not through sources, not in a biography that comes out in the year 2034, confirming it's retribution, and it's on tape. And on tape, retribution means selective prosecution, and selective prosecution is illegal. And you not only get the case thrown out if you've had to defend yourself and spend money or your reputation has been hurt, you can sue the government and the prosecutors, and it's on tape. And what Wiles said to Chief of Staff historian Chris Whipple about retribution, did I mention it's on tape, may also be enough for people who merely been fired or threatened by Trump to demand a court stop him and restore them to their jobs, or get damages out of him or his government, or completely shut down his government by vendetta and its efforts against them. That's 465 other Trump victims this year alone. Everybody from Jerome Powell to Jimmy Kimmel, all of whom may now have some kind of legal case against Trump and his drowning arguments because Pat Summerall's daughter couldn't keep her big bazoo shut and just let John Madden's child do all the talking. And if this was not enough for the 470 victims counted by Reuters to sue or get their cases dismissed, or to bury Trump's minions for selective prosecution and damages, Wiles actually somehow made it worse. She not only confirmed on tape that Trump was, quote, score settling, but also that she got him to agree to a loose agreement to stop it after his first 90 days in office, and also that Trump reneged on that. That is called guilty foreknowledge. She knew it was wrong, and Trump, having agreed to limit it, means he knew it was wrong. And now you're looking at potential criminal charges for everybody who tried to enact vengeance for their Dracula in the White House. Have fun in prison, Alina Habba. Good luck getting your hair done there, Lindsay Halligan, in the big house. Thanks, Susie Wiles. It's on tape. As we begin the third consecutive day that Trump will have shocked even those numb to him by now by not again firing Susie Wiles, the more important issue behind this may be why she thought she could get away with talking to this man. She told Mr. Whipple for Vanity Fair not only that Trump has, quote, an alcoholic's personality, but that she's seen the Epstein Files. And when Trump said there was evidence Bill Clinton visited Epstein Island, he was not telling the truth. She also insists she tried to convince Trump not to pardon the most violent insurrectionists of January 6th, insisted the deportations needed more work to prevent mistakes, and said there was an attempt to delay the tariff con job, my words, because his advisors had a, quote, huge disagreement over tariffs. And if you missed it, she leveled far more than just Trump. Wiles dismissed J.D. Vance as having, quote, been a conspiracy theorist for a decade, whose reasons for going from seeing Trump for what he is to whoring himself for him, those reasons were not principled, but, quote, sort of political. Wiles says when Attorney General Timu Blondie was given the Epstein files to handle, she, quote, completely whiffed, and that the budget director and 2025 Reichsmarshal Russell Vogt is, quote, a right-wing absolute zealot. Couldn't tell that from Project 2025, which he largely wrote, could you? And to Wiles, Elon Musk is, quote, an avowed ketamine user whose actions often leave her, quote, aghast and are not always, quote, rational, and who often tweets, quote, when he's microdosing. Susie Wiles, you have unsuspected depth. Okay, why does she think she'll get away with it? First off, she immediately issued a non-denial denial that she turned into lies about the Trump administration succeeding when it is repeatedly and spectacularly drowning, hitting icebergs, blowing up over New Jersey, and detonating like a SpaceX Musk rocket. Already accomplished, leadership and vision of Trump, relentless pursuit of blah, 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 blah. Not one quote denied, not one. Just the typical context was disregarded. Okay, Susie, what the hell is the context when you say Trump has the personality of an alcoholic, and you know that because your father was an alcoholic? So damage control must have always been her fallback, but why put herself in that position in the first place? I mean, Vance and Marco Rubio and Caroline Leavitt and Stephen Miller all posed, and so did Wiles, for vanity photographs in Vanity Fair. Happily, no sketch artist drew any of them nude. But for the other four, especially the evil Miller and the hapless Rubio, this was the chance to obtain the first presentable photographs of themselves in their lives. But Wiles doesn't care about that. She's not in it for fame. She's the daughter of Pat Summerall, the sportscaster, the longtime partner of John Madden. And from him, she not only knew the carcinogenic personality effects fame threatens you with, but she also learned the hard way how to make a judgment on Trump, like that most searing one, that Trump has an alcoholic's personality. Her dad was one. Quoting her again, high-functioning alcoholics or alcoholics in general, their personalities are exaggerated when they drink, and so I'm a little bit of an expert in big personalities. Trump doesn't drink, but acts like he does. The alcoholic's personality, complete with, again quoting, a view that there's nothing he can't do, nothing, zero, nothing. So she's not doing it to make herself the Susie Wiles. Don't get me wrong, she's one of the lead villains. She's on the list of Trump enablers. I hope they've all broken the law so they can all be prosecuted later, especially at the state level. Her beliefs are repugnant, her goals more so. But this isn't J.D. Vance, political prostitute, and this isn't somebody as amazingly unqualified as Patel or Bongino or Duffy or Bondi or as incredibly stupid as Caroline Leavitt. I assume that concept of her own status could be at the core of her tea spilling. Over the course of 11 interviews, on tape, she believes herself to be above these purely political frontmen who want the power and the glory and the glam shots in Vanity Fair. This may convey to her a false sense of security, or it may have, or she may have been confident because he already excommunicated her once and then brought her back. Or, bluntly, she may have inherited more from her father than his succinctness. Asked by the Times about her comment on Musk and ketamine, she said, quote, "That's ridiculous. I wouldn't have said it and I wouldn't know." Whereupon Vanity Fair played a tape of the interview and Wiles said every word of it. So maybe she was micro-somethinging her own self. Lord knows her father did. But I think it's likeliest that Susie Wiles, like many in this White House, figured she could get away with this because they are beginning to write Trump off because he is drowning. Not only because it's nearly 2026, and at best his shelf life is 3 years and a month from now, and she insisted not even Trump is serious about illegally running again or staying in office, that he just says it to enrage opponents. It's not just that the tick, 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 tick in the Oval gets louder every day. It's that she's got to believe Trump will never actually see the article in Vanity Fair or never actually see the actual quotes from it. We'll never read her say he's got, the personality of an alcoholic, even though he supposedly agreed with her on that. Or we'll never understand those quotes because if anybody knows Trump's brain is fading to black, it would have to be his chief of staff, Susie Wiles. Or she thinks Trump will see them and somehow will understand them, and then suddenly he will make her an ambassador to someplace warm. And now to the tipping point of this remarkable week, the moment the water began to rise around Trump, the Rob Reiner post. I hope you heard my bulletin on this Monday afternoon. It was my favorite philosopher, the 2nd century Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, out there trying to rule the decaying empire from deep in the woods of Germany, who wrote in what amounted to his diary, "You always own the option of having no opinion. There is never any need to get worked up or to trouble your soul about things you can't control. These things are not asking to be judged by you. Leave them alone." It's hard to do that. I'm example A. But it's harder to do that if, like Trump, you've never even heard of Marcus Aurelius. It was kind of encouraging to see how many of his sheep were still appalled by what Trump wrote, but there are always a few of the dumber ones who had to find a way to also ignore Marcus Aurelius and enshitify themselves, trying to rationalize Trump's irrationality. Like, who else? Laura Loomer. Rob Reiner was a loser. Naturally, his son was also a loser, and he got addicted to drugs and allegedly murdered his parents. Looks like Rob should have spent more time parenting and less time spreading Russia conspiracy hoaxes about President Trump. I stand with President Trump. And of course, she puts the chef's kick on this, or kiss, and says that this is a legitimate tweet. Rob Reiner, until Trump goes to prison, I will no longer be posting on Twitter. I have had it with the insults and put downs. F all of you MAGA assholes. It's, of course, a fake tweet. Everybody knows it's a fake tweet. It doesn't look like a real tweet. It's been identified as a fake tweet. It's also dated January 20th, 2023. And by the way, for me, that would be like a B- in terms of number of obscenities used about Trump. The Reiner tweet was, of course, a fake, just like Laura Loomer's face. By the way, Trump announced on social media that Laura Loomer is engaged. Engaged in what? Exactly. Then, of course, there were reminders that creatures like Laura Loomer aren't quite human. Those were preceded by the premature jocularity. The night before Trump disqualified himself from being president again, the right was completely holier than thou again. Jack Posobiec. You won't see people on the right celebrating the horrific murder of Rob Reiner and his wife compared to the left's reaction to Charlie Kirk's murder. 11:28 p.m. Sunday night. Brett Weinstein. Notice that the American right is not celebrating Rob Reiner's murder. I see post after post honoring his remarkable contribution to our culture despite his strident embrace of progressive lunacy in his later years. This is America displaying our common humanity. May his memory and his remarkable body of work be a blessing to us all. 12:59 a.m. Monday. Very nice. And then Trump celebrated Rob Reiner's murder. So no matter who on his side did not, the lead guy did. As Loomer suggested, Trump's disgusting touchdown dance on my friend Rob's grave and his wife's grave, and Loomer and the even dumber versions of Loomer needing something, anything to try to justify what Trump did. I even saw them use screen caps of one of my tweets, particularly the one that read, "Burn in hell Sinclair," next to Charlie Kirk. This was after Sinclair Broadcasting tried to get Jimmy Kimmel fired because he didn't pretend Charlie Kirk was Jesus Christ, while consoling the family and condemning the killing anyway. And they wanted Kimmel not only to lose his job, but also to pay a bribe to some kind of Charlie Kirk Memorial Sane-washing fund. I'll say it again. The killing of Charlie Kirk was indefensible then. It is indefensible now. It will be indefensible later. The killing of political commentators is indefensible. I believe this firmly. I may believe it more than you do since I'm a political commentator. But you know what else is indefensible? Charlie Kirk and his cult of hatred and violent fantasies and racism and complete disregard for anybody who wasn't exactly like him. He called for public executions and to force kids to watch them. I'm sorry if the people who thought they knew him never actually read the Bible. It's clear in page after page that the evil, those who are evil, like Charlie Kirk, are going to hell. Sorry. Unless you right-wingers are saying the Bible isn't literally correct. Also, how are you comparing Charlie Kirk, who contributed nothing to this country, to Rob Reiner? But I've got a worse comp, even bigger than that. When the far right goes and says it's all right for Trump to have celebrated Rob Reiner's murder because I said Charlie Kirk was going to hell. So my comments and Trump's comments are of equal importance somehow. I carry the same influence as the president of the United States. I am in some way as important as him. I suddenly begin to suspect that I am underpaid. Also of interest here, Laura Ingraham doesn't know what country Canada is. No, I'm not kidding. And just when I thought the pecking order had become clear of which of my exes was the most self-destructive, Laura is moving swiftly round the clubhouse turn and down the stretch they come. That's next. This is Countdown.
This is Countdown with Keith Olbermann.
Still ahead on this edition of Countdown. I missed the exact anniversary, but just by a few days. It was this past Monday, the 42nd anniversary of the morning I met and first interviewed Trump. He was almost exactly the same then, not really human and kind of drowning. The only difference, we had yet to make the dumbest, most evil man on earth president. The day I met it. Next, in things I promised not to tell. First, believe it or not, there's still more new idiots to talk about. The roundup of the miscreants, morons, and Dunning-Kruger effect specimens who constitute today's other worst persons in the world. The bronze, worse. If you're like me, you hate to see an ex beginning to slip. No, not Katie. No, not even Kirsten. No, not even Libby. Laura Ingraham. Okay, so it was 2 dates, and one of them was really more of a hostage situation, which I was the hostage. Still, this gets posted on social media from somebody named Mark Nixon. Breaking: Doug Ford just announced billions in investment to turn Niagara Falls into the Las Vegas of the North. Mega casinos, a new theme park, and a plan to double tourism. And there is a picture of Doug Ford at a podium announcing this. And there's all sorts of logos on the podium indicating who Doug Ford is, in case you don't know. And Laura retweets this, adding, "Gambling. Ugh, we need manufacturing, not this." We need manufacturing, not this. Laura, Doug Ford is the premier of Ontario. Ontario, which is in Canada, which is a different country than ours. Unless, Laura, you think Trump annexed it using only his superior mind. Your first hint should have been the podium at which Doug Ford is shown speaking in the video, the podium that literally has a sign on it that says "Protect Ontario" in 2 different languages. Protéger l'Ontario, which is French, which is a different language than you speak. Then again, half the time, English is a different language than Laura speaks. My God. The runner-up, worser, New York City Councilwoman Vicky Palladino. She's the drama queen from Queens. On the Brown University shootings, or as these nightmares are more cynically known, the latest chance for MAGAs on top of everything else to make fools of themselves. She writes, "Very clear now that the attack at Brown was perpetrated by a leftist activist and targeted Republicans. The people who openly celebrated Charlie Kirk's murder en masse and faced exactly 0 social or legal consequences for it have been emboldened to kill more conservatives." Vicky Palladino, actually elected by idiots in Queens. The vice president of Brown University's Republican Club, a student named Ella Cook, was one of 2 killed, and I mourn what happened to her and grieve for her family. The other fatality was a student from Uzbekistan who did not appear to be a Republican. Among the 11 who were injured in the shooting, there's no official list, but lots of local news reports around the country about this high school's graduate who was shot and this high school's graduate who was nearly shot. And they indicated that all the others were just, students in a Brown University Saturday prep class for an economics final. One of the kids was a freshman who manages the women's volleyball team, which incidentally, if I ever have a second life, I'm going to have the presence of mind to try to do that as the freshman, to be the manager of the women's volleyball team. Great idea, kid. I'm hoping you're back in play real soon. Another of the victims was just an engineering major who got stuck taking an economics class. There does not seem to have been another politically active victim, but you can't tell that to somebody like this idiot Palladino. Very clear now, it was perpetrated by a leftist activist and targeted Republicans. And I'm sorry I can't get you a deep enough voice to really give you an indication of how she sounds. And she thinks that way because she has lost the plot of life. If there was one victim who was in the Republican Club and 11 who were not, the 11 don't count to her. Never mind Keystone Cop Cash's FBI and what appear to be 2 occasions where they decided they had the perpetrator, only it turned out they didn't and got the wrong person. It's very clear to Vicky Palladino. Like everything else in your life, Councilwoman, nothing at all is very clear. But the winner, the worst, same topic, Philip Buchanan. You do not know Philip Buchanan, not certainly under his name, Philip Buchanan. He is the Florida loser and Twitter troll known as Cat Turd. Here's what he has to say about Brown. They're not telling you the identity of the Brown shooter because they want to wipe all his social media first. Paranoia the Destroyer. Sir, they're not telling you the identity of the Brown shooter because Kash Patel keeps getting the wrong guy. Identified and or arrested, Kash Patel keeps getting the wrong guy. But there is something useful in what you have written here, turd. That part about wipe all his social media? Have you considered that for your own self? Philip, why would anybody choose to call themselves cat turd because he's pretending his life is better than it is? Buchanan, today's other worst person in the world. To the number one story on the countdown, and the things you never know and the things you'll never realize at the time that someday you will need to promise not to tell. I met Trump when I was 24 years old. It's a pretty good story. His hair was still its original color then, more or less. It was thinning. He'd done something to it. It was combed strangely. He was weird, unsettling, unnatural, but it was New York in 1983. Everybody had done something to their hair. I had a perm. Everybody was weird and unsettling. But if you had said this in the future, this is how this will end up, I would never have believed you. The president thing? The coup thing, the dictatorship thing, the violence thing, the burying the wife on the golf course thing. No. I would have believed all that. I mean, he was really weird. I meant the President McCheese thing.
I like China and I like President Xi's.
And here's another clip that slipped through the cracks, but only for a moment. This was Newsmax. This was the interview where Trump just kept talking and talking and talking. And even poor, dumb Greg Kelly glazed over as he listened. And Trump said his big takeaway from the New York trial was that none of the jurors smiled at him. The light bulb went off over my head. This is far more important than it could possibly seem at first blush.
There's no way. You heard me say long before the verdict that Mother Teresa couldn't get a fair trial here. I said that. And no, you couldn't. I never saw a glimmer of a smile from the jury. No, this was a venue that was very unfair.
Oh, my God, did I have a flashback there. I have had the misfortune to meet Trump in person 4 times, the first late in 1983. And each time I saw the exact moment that his face went from an emotionless, almost lifeless, certainly non-human mask to a beaming, phony smile. That's who he is. That's what he thinks is his asset. An irresistible smile. You and I look at him and see a face of evil and debauchery and mostly a guy who claims to be rich and yet clearly buys his makeup at the cheap end of the notions department at Filene's basement. But he really thinks he can sell anybody anything, and somewhere early in life, he decided his means of doing that was to mimic a human smile and really make it as big and as preposterous as possible. And he's done this now for at least 70 years. From his childhood dementia to this dementia. And the way he registers a sale with people, his receipt for convincing them to do his bidding, is their smile in return. So the jury didn't smile at him. So the jury was biased against him. So the jury was corrupt. So the trial was rigged. So when he says these crazy things, there is a part of him that truly believes it is rigged because they are, as the kids say, not buying what he's selling. He believes life is a transaction, and when he gives you his smile, you have to give him yours, and then he owns you. I met him in the lobby of the apartment building I used to live at here, the no longer Trump Palace. I saw him first, then he saw me, then he whispered to one of his flunkies. I'm guessing he was double-checking it was me. Then he stared at me for a moment. Then when he thought I was first looking at him, his dead face turned immediately into that fake smile. Remember the Cinco de Mayo Taco Bowl tweet from 2016 where he says, I love Hispanics, like there were actual Hispanics in the Taco Bowl and he was eating them? That fake smile. But his eyesight is not as good as he lets on, so he doesn't know that you have seen him first. He had done the same thing twice in the lobbies of 30 Rock at NBC. Once stopping just to shake hands, once actually stopping to tell me how good Countdown was and how pissed off his buddy Bill O'Reilly would get whenever he told him how good Countdown was, and then striding off. And I watched to see if I could see that fake smile that had appeared so suddenly vanish just as suddenly, but his back was turned to me. However, December 15th, 1983, CNN sends me to cover a New York Post sports forum where owner George Steinbrenner of the New York Yankees, owner Fred Wilpon of the New York Mets, Sonny Werblin of the New York Rangers and Knicks, and this real estate hump Trump, who owned the sort of pro football team in New Jersey, they would speak and do interviews and meet fans and whatever. And I interviewed them all briefly, and when it came time to interview this Trump guy, he stood there and looked at me like he was trying to guess my weight. Then we put the camera light on, and there it was, this big fake smile out of nowhere. And I asked some questions about the New Jersey Generals, and he boasted he was hiring a new name coach who used to coach the Jets, only turned out he hadn't hired him yet, and he spent a week cleaning up that mess. And when I said thank you and we turned the light off, he turned off the big fake smile. Zap, it was gone, and the blank look repeated in his eyes. A couple of years ago, on a cold night, I turned a corner here, and a familiar but older face shouted, "Keith!" And suddenly I realized it's a CNN cameraman I haven't seen in 30 years. Remember when we covered Trump at that sports thing? He says. And I realized he was the cameraman that day at the Post thing. Remember what you said about him? And I didn't. And he laughs, and he says, we were walking back to the truck, and you didn't say anything? And that worried us, because when have you ever shut up for 5 minutes? And so finally I say, what's bothering you? And you stopped and you turned and you looked at me and Jimmy and you said, that last guy we interviewed, Trump, what the F is wrong with that guy? I've done all the damage I can do here. Thank you for listening. Most of our Countdown music was arranged, produced, and performed by Brian Ray and John Philip Chanel, our musical directors of Countdown. It was produced by TKO Brothers. Mr. Ray on guitars, bass, and drums. Mr. Chanel with orchestration and keyboards. Our satirical and pithy musical comments are by the best baseball stadium organist ever, Nancy Faust. The sports music was the Olbermann theme from ESPN2. It appears courtesy of ESPN Inc. and was written by Mitch Warren Davis. Other music arranged and performed by the group No Horns Allowed. My announcer today was my friend Stevie Van Zandt. This program was produced by Ted. Everything else was, as always, my fault. That's Countdown for today, day 333 of America held hostage again, but just 1,130 days until the scheduled end of his lame duck and lame-brained term, unless he's removed sooner by MAGA and Jeffrey Epstein or affordability or Susie Wiles. It's on tape. The next scheduled countdown is Monday. Until then, I'm Keith Olbermann. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, and good luck.